Hello party people and welcome back to my channel and Happy New Year! So today we are doing a review of Cyberpunk 2077. And yeah, this one was a little hard to put together because on one hand I had a lot to say about the game, but on the other hand it just feels weird to review something that so many players are having such a hard time playing right now. Anyway, I'll go over some of the glitches I had in the game and my general experience, but given the amount of conversation and content that's already out in the interworld about the issues with the game, it just doesn't really seem necessary to add another drop to the rage bucket. I'm just gonna give my opinion and perception of the game, so we'll do that. If you like today's video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe so that you can stay up to date on the channel. Other than that, let's get into this review of Cyberpunk 2077.
So to start off, let me give you some context on my first exposure to Cyberpunk. About a year or so ago, I finally gave in to my boyfriend's recommendation to play through one of his favorite games, The Witcher 3. Once I had finished the game, I was completely enchanted by the series and moved on to complete a playthrough of all the DLCs and The Witcher 2. I even went to the point of purchasing The Last Wish to read during some downtime, and while I actually didn't finish the book or get around to reading any more of the Witcher series, the thought is still there. Now you may be asking yourself, what does this have to do with Cyberpunk, and should I move on to the next video on the game? Well, being that CD Projekt Red developed both the Witcher series and Cyberpunk, I decided to give the game a try, and that's kind of my main reason for the tangent. See, for me, the marketing for Cyberpunk came off as Fight Club meets Grand Theft Auto 5, and given I didn't care for either of those things, it didn't seem like the game was meant for me. I mean, I watched a few of the sneak peek game footage and tried to read about the game to understand the hype a little more, and it still didn't convince me it was the be-all, end-all game. Anyway, what I'm getting at is I didn't see the hype in the game. It's a game that had potential, but if I learned anything from my experience about hype and Kingdom Hearts 3, it's that you have to keep the hype in check and remember it's still a game. With that being said, I really enjoyed my time playing Cyberpunk 2077 once I had a chance to really sit down and dive into the game. It took some time, don't get me wrong, it's not like the screen opened and I was completely sold. For me, the writing and character development of the game was the key factor that kept me engaged, and coming back to the game to explore Night City and the wacky shenanigans I could get my character into. I've mentioned throughout my videos that I'm a narrative-driven player. Given the current state of the game, I have to be thankful for that, because that's probably the one thing that kept me going in Cyberpunk. I wanted to explore each character's narratives and move through the main story with my girl V and see where the story could go. And knowing different interactions and leads would take my character to different places and a potential different ending kept things fresh and exhilarating for me. Now I know the general story doesn't really change much and you are limited to a few different endings in the game, but the thought of having options and different outcomes, even if it's just 2 or 3 different endings, is still very cool to me and something that makes me want to go back and try for a different ending. More on that a little bit later. I think one of the things CD Projekt Red is truly gifted at and hasn't strayed too far from is their ability to tell a story and create compelling characters. Without getting into too many spoilers, I found myself fully invested in the early onset of characters you'll meet and engage with in the prologue of the game, and felt impacted by them once the game had fully opened up and the fate of those characters, whether it was good or bad. Given that was just the prologue of the game and that it hadn't fully opened up yet, I would say that's some pretty compelling character writing to be ready to throw down for these people at a moment's notice, and I haven't even figured out where the nearest Starbucks or McDonald's is in the game yet. And while the general story itself was written fairly well and the main campaign was worth my playthrough on its own, I found myself equally invested in the multiple side quests and supporting characters I came across along the way. In a way, I was a bit ashamed some of these folks and narratives are so hidden in the game. Go the wrong way or skip a certain area of the map and you'll likely to miss them. Oftentimes I'd find myself playing Cyberpunk with the full intention of progressing in the story just to see I've spent the last 2 hours working on side jobs and exploring the map because I wanted to see the next side narrative and what lied behind another nearby side quest. So if I leave you with anything about Cyberpunk, because honestly from here on it's probably going to be a bit redundant, it's that the game is worth giving a try for the story and the many characters sprinkled throughout the game. Okay, so that's kind of my main pro of the game. Now, unfortunately, it wouldn't be fair or right to continue without addressing the elephant in the room. Yeah, so the glitches. I mentioned in an earlier video that I was playing Cyberpunk on my PlayStation 4 Pro, and I think that might have been my saving grace. Putting plainly, I was actually able to play the game. Yes, there were glitches and crashes, but nothing to the point where the game was unplayable. So on that note, let's briefly talk about the glitches throughout the game. If you're attempting a playthrough of Cyberpunk at the moment, it's a given. However, given the severity of the glitches and how my system was handling them, I found some of the bugs to be a bit enjoyable at times due to their comedic timing or just outright ridiculousness. Don't you remember the time we used to search on YouTube for videos of Roach from The Witcher 3 and all the glitches that occurred during that playthrough? Just saying that smaller scale glitches can still be enjoyable from time to time. But when they happen on a small scale and don't have a large impact on the game, we can all share on that brief chuckle. I mean, didn't Bob Ross mention something about happy little accidents? So that's me trying to make a positive out of a negative, but in the case of Cyberpunk, the glitches aren't always on the smaller scale. Obviously, there were some heavier issues that fell on the more annoying than acceptable side of things. For me, that's probably the saddest thing about Cyberpunk, because as I had mentioned earlier, I greatly enjoyed the game, and at least today, the bad is truly outshadowing the good. And I'm sad to see so many players having such a bad experience with the game when it's one that can truly be enjoyed by a wide range of players. When I say the game is available for a wide range of players, I truly mean it in the terms of playstyle from my own experience. My boyfriend and I did a playthrough of the game around the same time, and I enjoyed how we both were able to enjoy the game through our own styles, while the other was silently watching and picked up their own tidbits as they waited for their turn. While I'm more of a narrative-driven player, my boyfriend was more motivated by the in-depth character building through the skill trees and crafting abilities. He'd spend most of his time reading up on skill trees and character builds to customize his character to his liking, all while testing out his new abilities on Regina Jones's latest cyberpsychosis finds or NCPD tasks. Players also have the ability to customize and build their character around a single or a variety of weapon types due to the flexibility of the skill tree as well. While that doesn't necessarily appeal to me as a player, I was happy to have the option to pursue the game the way I wanted to and didn't need to spend too much time on the skill tree or crafting objects I'd probably forget to use or upgrade. For the most part, the game also felt good to play. Players have the ability to pick and choose their combat style, whether that's shooting, melee attacks, or hacking. Given hacking wasn't my preferred method of attack, based on my observations, the player's ability to hack instead of hands-on combat was a nice adjustment to an otherwise tech and cyber-oriented world. Even just walking around Night City and dropping into other NPCs' conversations was so exhilarating and dense, I was a bit surprised the exploration wasn't a full-on game to itself. Speaking on density though, I will admit the game can be a bit overwhelming at times with all that is thrown at the player. Like there really isn't a time where you can casually walk around the city or Badlands and your phone isn't being blown up with request after request. I kinda wish there was a feature to silence your phone when you're out in the city just to stay focused on a single task at hand rather than walking down the street being flashed another side job when I've already got 5 others lined up. I completely understand Doug from Up Now and his short attention span.
Squirrel!
The game can also be a bit difficult to navigate at times if you're just working off the map. I mentioned earlier that I enjoyed the multiple side jobs I came across that were driven by a heavier narrative. However, the map itself made it difficult to find those jobs and other items, and it can be a mess at times. There's little distinction between quick fetch or kill quests and those jobs that are narrative driven. Don't get me wrong, they're there, but you have no idea if the marker you're approaching is something more of substance or another cyberpsychosis spot Regina needs you to take care of. Again, some folks are into these. I, on the other hand, would like to catch up with my friend Brandon the vending machine or my girl Judy if she has the time. Driving, on the other hand, is another area that could probably use a little bit of tweaking. I know there are some comparisons to driving in Grand Theft Auto 5, and I have to agree. While it's great to blast through Night City at 100 miles per hour on your motorbike or a recent car jack, you know you're not going to make that sudden turn unless you slow down to a near stop or take the corner at full force. Not super terrible things, but I would spend a lot of time moving around the map trying to find a quest I was interested in or foolishly navigate around a pedestal or roadblock because I took a turn too fast or overestimated the size of my vehicle and didn't quite make the fit between 2 cars. So all in all, while Cyberpunk is glitchy as hell and has some major issues to work out, I'd still say it's a game worth playing if you have the opportunity to. Based off my experience, the main story and narrative-driven side jobs are ones worth exploring and held up to the expectation I had for CD Projekt Red, and their ability to craft compelling, thought-out characters. Players pursuing the game have the ability to craft and build unique characters from the in-depth skill tree and develop characters that cater to their playing style. Night City in itself is also so jam-packed and dense with side quests, characters, and items, I found myself losing hours from the main story just based on exploring the city and the many different environments in it. As I wrap things up, I'm reminded that while there's a lot of negative press and conversation surrounding Cyberpunk 2077, I've been lucky enough to experience the game and step out of the most hectic and stressful year of my lifetime for about 30 hours or so. And while the game itself definitely isn't the end-all be-all in terms of gaming, it will still go down as one of my brighter things to happen this year. It's a goal of mine to come back to the game in a year or so once things have been ironed out a little more and players can experience the game in the way that developers intended. Until then, though, I'll have to opt for flying motorcycles and gun-wielding lifters and take the game for what it is, which I'm okay with at the moment. Thank you so much for tuning into my review of Cyberpunk 2077. What are your thoughts of the game? Was it worth all the hype, or is it best to wait some time down the road and play the game in its fullest potential? Leave your thoughts in the comment box below. I want to thank all my new subscribers who recently joined the channel and for pushing my Assassin's Creed review up to 500 views! That's truly crazy sauce in my book, and my mind is still digesting that bit of information. I hope everyone's 2021 is off to a rocking start, and I will see you guys next time for the next video.